future.
There are no people.
There are no people in the future.
No people at all.
There are no people in the future.
Where did all my people go?
There are no people in the future.
Let me try my people call. Where are all my people? Where are all my people? I guess I'll fly away now.
Hey everybody, welcome to Raging Chickens, Out to Coop Live. Yes, it is our live call-in show, interview show, open phone show for Monday, May 24th, 2021. On Out to Coop Live, we talk to progressives, activists, and troublemakers of all sorts, right from our own backyards or from across the country. On Fridays, it's our news roundup, where Sean Kitchen and I break down the good, the bad, and the ugly in state and national politics. And of course, we've got the new The Wednesday show, because it's on Wednesday, a Wednesday morning show with Cyril Mikaleko. This Wednesday, May 26th, will be our second show together, and we'll be talking about some PASSHE. He had a great piece that came out last week on PASSHE, featuring in part yours truly and Jamie Martin from Abscuff, and he's got a great take on everything. So Cyril and I will be back on Wednesday. You can get all our shows, every single one of them, by subscribing to our podcast on Podbeans, iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. And listen, do me a favor, everybody. If you subscribe on iTunes, make sure you leave us a review. Make sure you leave us a review, give us that 5-star review, and leave a comment, like it. Make sure that they know that you're listening and that you like the show. The better reviews we get over on iTunes, the more kind of people get to hear it, right? It's the way the algorithm works, right? And while you're at it, if you're watching right now on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the channel, make sure you like this stream, and make sure you hit that little notification bell so that you know every single time that we go live. And do what you can, share it out, and this is how we kind of get the word out. Share it out to your friends, and do it there. So anyways, you can subscribe to it all. Right. Anywhere you get your podcast, you can get the audio podcast. You can always go over to our YouTube channel. You can check out the replay. This has just been absolutely kind of an amazing couple of months as we've seen this podcast grow and grow. And you can help support this show, help our expansions by becoming a patron for as little as $5 a month. Just go to patreon.com/rcpress and choose your membership level. I thank our May members once again. Thank you to Jillian, and thank you to Christopher, who upped his patronage from $5 to $10 a month. Thank you both, and thanks to everybody who supported the show and has supported Raging Chicken right from the get-go when we got started back in 2011. I want to give a special kind of shout out to the Rick Smith show. Yes, Rick, was got back in touch with Rick this week after just kind of being in my little hole for long. But you can check out Rick Smith's live stream at 9 p.m. Eastern on his YouTube channel, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you get your stream. If you got a stream, Rick's going to be on it, right? He's going to be there 9 p.m. tonight and every weekday night. And you can also subscribe to his daily podcast wherever you get your podcast. And go to the ricksmithshow.com for all the latest across all his platforms. He's also got the Saturday show on Free Speech TV at 7 p.m. Check out all that information. Just go to thericksmithshow.com. And you got to check out the Sisters of the Night podcast. You can find it on Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcast. The amazing PA women stirring the political cauldron behind this podcast rock the house. And they know where the bodies are buried. Spooky, right? Make sure to follow them on Twitter at The Night Caucus. That's at The Night Caucus. I don't know if you caught that, but my daughter, who's always with me for my broadcast, gave it the big what in the background when I said about where the bodies are buried, which is awesome. And want to give a shout out for all you gamers out there. Do check out The Game In. That's The Game In with 2 N's. The Game In is a Quakertown-based black family-owned gaming store. They're friends of the show, and they've got everything from retro N64s to the latest consoles, video games for all platforms, loads of collectibles, action figures, Funko Pops, and kids get discounts with every A on the report card. Check them out on their Facebook page. Follow them on Twitter at The Game In with 2 N's. Give me a question about a game, drop them a line at thegameinpa@gmail.com. get all the information at thegamein.com. And again, it's with 2 N's. And a special shout out as usual to Jonathan Mann, who wrote the intro song, our intro song, There Are No People in the Future. Check out all his great stuff on his YouTube page and follow him on Twitter at excuse me, at Song a Day Man. That's with 2 N's, at Song a Day Man on Twitter. Well, I'll tell you, I was out in the doing some yard work all day today. The pollen has been nasty. So excuse my little coughing here, my little coughing fit. But here it is. So tonight's show, we're going back to a little open phones format tonight. And I've got some things that have kind of been on my mind. Had a really busy weekend. And if you recall, a couple weeks ago, we were testing out our new platform on riverside.fm, which is where we're kind of broadcasting in real time. They have really excellent audio and video quality that we're hoping to kind of improve some of that parts of our show. It allows for listeners to call in, right, which I'll tell you a little bit about in a second. And so that first night, which is kind of a really like, hey, let's see how this goes, right? And we kind of figured a few things out about the about how it works and some of the kind of, you know, the bumps that you run into and any time that you start a kind of new technological endeavor, which is really good. And then we launched a show last week. We had a fantastic show last week on just like a great new kind of organization kind of launching called PASSHE Defenders, which was kind of totally cool. We had a great conversation of some of the organizers who were getting that going. And so tonight I wanted to kind of come back and do another round of open phones, in part because it's just kind of busy week around here. And I wanted to kind of figure out some of the glitches in this program once again. So I thought instead of trying to schedule another guest here, I want to make sure that we do another round on it, making sure that I've got my end going right for future shows, because we've got some great shows coming up over this summer. I'm telling you, I can't wait to be able to announce them once we get them locked down. I was been super excited about a bunch of them. I was talking to Cyril Mikaleko earlier today, and we were kind of talking some plans about our Wednesday show and some ideas about how to kind of build out some kind of community, how to maybe even include some guests in that show. If you've listened to the Wednesday show, it's a bit of a shorter show. We're trying to kind of let that one, or have that one come in around just about a half an hour, maybe 40 minutes tops. So it's a little bit more of a kind of a quick take show. I want to get a range of options here. So the other thing that you're going to see pretty soon coming into Raging Chicken is we're going to see a redesign of our website. So if you go over to ragingchickenpress.org, that was our original site, right? ragingchickenpress.org. If you go over to there, there's a lot of, you know, look, it's admittedly stale content there. And we haven't published on that site because that was really, you know, a writing focused site. That's where we did a lot of our kind of muckraking journalism. That's where we did a lot of our, you know, broke a bunch of stories and reporting. And that was our platform for a long time until we started with this podcast. We had some, you know, Sean Kitchen, who I was, you know, was my co-editor and my partner in crime and Raging Chicken right from the get-go. He went off and he got a job, right? Like actually a paying job, because this job doesn't pay any of us, right? We would love to get to the point where this would be sustaining in the sense that I could do this all day, every day. I would absolutely love that, but that's not going to happen right at this point unless we get a whole bunch of people just going on to patreon.com/rcpress and becoming members right away, which is why we keep on pushing that. I had a couple issues come up earlier today, which is reminded me again about why we try to do Raging Chicken as a members-supported podcast and don't do a whole lot of, you know, begging at the seats of power, so to speak. Don't go to, you know, the usual rounds of funders to see if they would kind of fund us, right? And it has to do with, you know, things like editorial control. It has to do with the fact of not worrying that someone's going to pull their funding because you said something that they don't like. And, you know, this doesn't even, you know, it works in very subtle ways in terms of editorial control over, you know, what we say and what we do. Right. And, you know, I think Sean and I, when we do our weekend wrap-up show on Fridays, even with our interview show, we're not kind of lambasting things or saying outrageous stuff, right? But, look, the fact of the matter is that if you want to foreground progressive and left voices, and you believe that, say, certain organizations can be pushed, right? Or, you disagree with some policy choices that are being made by, say the Democratic Party or something like this, or from say the labor movement or the environmental movement, right? That you can kind of say what you're gonna have to say, and they could get mad, right? And that's fine, right? And they could get mad, get as mad as they want. But they don't hold anything over you, right? So that's, from the get-go is why we wanted this to be member controlled, member funded. And of that. But of course, we recognize that comes with limitations, right? It means that unless we have some sort of billionaire kind of angel that drops us some sort of anonymous donation, it means that we kind of require folks just like you, right, to step up, become a patron at patreon.com/rcpress for as little as $5 a month. And it means you can spread the word by sharing our content on social media, making sure that, you give us those ratings on iTunes, right? You give us those ratings on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast, right? And say, yeah, I like this, and kind of share that stuff out. Subscribing to our YouTube channel has actually been really big. I've been very excited. We were at, I think, 119 subscribers in a very short period of time. We really hadn't been pushing subscriptions on YouTube, but I think that's going to be a more consistent part of our work going forward. And so once I started kind of asking folks to subscribe and seeing the subscriber base kind of like pop up kind of above 100, then pop up close to 120. Hopefully we get over 120 during this broadcast tonight. That would be freaking amazing. I'd be so psyched. So if you know people out there who haven't subscribed to our podcast yet, bug them right now. Say, hey, get over, do me a favor, just go over here and subscribe to this podcast. Don't even ask me why. Just go over and subscribe to the podcast, or subscribe to the YouTube channel, and like the stream, and then you can go back and have your night, right? Just go ahead and do that. So anyways, yeah, so that's that. Oh, one other thing I should say, I just put this in the YouTube chat. We have a Discord server too as well, which we launched. We've been doing a kind of slow launch on that. We haven't really been pushing it too hard, right? In part because I want to see who's going to be coming on, what we're going to do with it, and think about that. But I put a link there in the show notes. You can also check it out in the show notes below, right below the stream in YouTube. And I'm sorry, here we go again. And yeah, and you could join up to our Discord server. So what we're going to use that for is that right now you can live chat, and we go, if you're not familiar with Discord, you can go to there's channels, right, that you can kind of run into on your Discord server. And so you kind of join our Discord server, and you go on and you'll see these kind of text channels with these little hashtags next to them. There's a general one, there's events and so on. And if you scroll down a little bit, there's one with the hashtag live chat. That's the one that we'll use during the show. That's the one that we'll hang on to after the show. So like after this show ends, during the live show, I'm going to have to produce it and send it up and load up. I'm just kind of doing a bunch of the technical work after the show. And so I'm going to be hanging on there for kind of continued discussion. There's also a section called the lounge, hashtag lounge. And that's just kind of really, I pop on there and just to kind of hang out. So when we start really kind of pushing and say building our Discord server and kind of expanding members and things like this and having folks kind of joining the conversation, that will be a place where we could have some exclusive content. We already have exclusive patrons only section of our Discord, which we're going to eventually unroll some very, what do you call it? Really kind of, I don't know, specific for patrons content going down. I'm not quite sure how that's gonna look thus far, but we'll get there. So I like to do these kind of shows every once in a while. Simply, these call-in shows on Monday, just to kind of give you a touch base, because I think one of the things that's been a hallmark of our work over the years has also been wanting to share with our listeners and our supporters a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes too as well. So so I'm sorry if all this kind of in the weeds stuff about what's happening behind the scenes is not your cup of tea, but there it is, in the goal of being, excuse me, man, a little transparent with our members. So, on tonight's show, so we're going to do a couple things. So this is the new platform, Riverside FM. I'll tell everybody up front right now. The goal of Riverside, or not the goal, but the reason why we shifted over to Riverside is because it provides some really good quality on recording of both video and audio. It does that because it locally records everything and then uploads it. So even if you don't have a great internet connection, usually the recording that goes up is going to be really useful. And Riverside, unlike some of the other platforms I was looking at, has an ability to take live calls, which I wanted to preserve when we were hosted the Monday show doing it on Podbean Live. That was one of the things that I really liked about it, is that people could call right in. Okay. So, yeah, so people could call right in, and that's been good. Anyways, I just had a little glitch up here. I just wanted to make sure that was all right. So the way that we're going to work this on Mondays, especially even when we have guests, but if I'm doing a live call-in show, one of the things that we'll do is that I'll let folks know when we'll get ready to take some calls, right? And the reason is this. If you are watching this on YouTube, which is probably where most people kind of are watching it, if they're not listening to it as a podcast afterwards, if you're watching it on YouTube and you try to then kind of click on the link and then join Riverside and have both of those things open and going on at the same time, what happens is that you end up getting a huge delay if you're listening to the YouTube and trying to respond to what I'm saying on Riverside, and also it gives you some feedback and some echo. So if you've ever called into a radio show, for example, they say, hey, you got to turn down your volume, you got to turn down your volume. It's the same principle here. But we suggest that, when we do the call-in section, if you do want to call in and you're watching on YouTube, the links are right there in the show description. You just go and you click on that link, right? And then log into Riverside and then either minimize your YouTube page, but definitely kind of mute the volume on it. And then I'll take you as a call in Riverside. Okay. The second thing, and I'm going to ask you, I'll remind folks if anybody calls in tonight, that you're going to see a little icon in your browser that is that indicates that it's recording. Right. One of the things that one of the little one of the little kind of like nuances of Riverside is that since it's recording in your browser and it needs to upload that. So what we also recommend, and this is what they recommend too as well, is if you're going to call in, do it in a Chrome browser, right? That will ensure that you get the highest quality of stuff that's uploaded, right? And one other thing I'll ask you to do is make sure the little uploads button shows up and says that it has been uploaded before you close your browser. Okay. I know that's a lot of information now, but I'll remind you a little bit later. Anyways. So tonight, I've got a few things kind of going through my mind, and I thought it would, I thought we kind of pick up on a theme that we've been hammering at for a little bit. Like some of that stuff is PASSHE and so on. But I thought that I got a couple pieces here that I just thought I'd read a little bit of, kind of talk a little bit about, and then see what folks have to say. If you do have comments or questions, by the way, feel free to kind of put your comments in YouTube. You could comment there. You can also comment on our Discord. I'm watching both of those right now. You could kind of see them behind me scrolling up. So that shows you that I'm kind of logged in and watching. So there you go. All right. So the first one is this. This is regarding PASSHE consolidation. A good friend of mine, Seth Kahn, someone I've worked with in kind of union and activist work for kind of quite some time. We got our jobs in the PASSHE system at the same time. He's kind of like, he's been my co-thinker in so many kind of organizing capacities over the years, to the point where, I don't talk to him for a while, and then we kind of have this conversation and realize that we're both been kind of on the same page, thinking about the same stuff, but from these different angles, and which it's always super, super productive. Anyways, he just published a couple days ago this open letter to Chancellor Greenstein. And so I want to read a little bit of this for you, in part because this, I think, reflects a perspective that we're not hearing in kind of the media as a whole. So here he goes. This is the open letter, and it's called An Open Letter to Chancellor Greenstein Regarding PASSHE Consolidation. If you want to follow along, if you want to check it out, I put the links in the show notes and YouTube too as well. So, Dear Chancellor Greenstein, I write as a citizen of Pennsylvania, a faculty member at Westchester University, and a committed advocate for public higher education in the Commonwealth and nationally. I am not writing as a representative of the faculty union. I've already written to the Board of Governors to express my distress at their willingness to move so hastily through such a complex process, and to Governor Wolf to express my suspicion that if this experiment of yours goes awry, you'll leave a giant mess for those of us who are genuinely committed to the system to clean up while you go elsewhere. There's a lot I want to say about the plan itself and the process by which we've gotten here. But for the sake of simplicity, I'll frame my point as much as possible as a response to a comment you made on the Leaders and Leadership podcast. During your appearance, you said, and this is a quote that Greenstein said on that podcast, quote, "This is not super fun. In these roles, you must lead from courage because the resistance you're going to face is intense, it's profound, and it is potentially a fundamental threat to your longevity in the role. And you can't let that get in the way of doing the right thing." Unquote. This is back to Seth. Honestly, please take a minute or two to understand what it sounds like you're saying here. First, it's not supposed to be fun to oversee a system that's been underfunded by a legislator for decades. Nobody disagrees that there are problems. Second, and more substantively, you've dismissed the knowledge and energy and commitment of more than 5,000 faculty and thousands of staff and students and others who also are pretty smart and well-educated people. And you've lumped them in, and you call them all as resistance, instead of considering the possibility that maybe it's legitimate disagreement because we also know things. We know students and their families and alums by the tens of thousands who think this plan is dangerously undercooked. We know legislators who agree. You spoke to several of them during the hearings. We know the impacts your vision will have on their local communities where consolidating campuses are located. We know that our collective bargaining agreement, which, as a friendly reminder, you and the Board of Governors also ratified, I'll have a comment on that in a minute, requires answers answers that the current plan does not provide. We are not resisting you. We think this plan has a lot wrong with it, and a lot more that's not clear to be adoptable. And you're responding to that by simply accusing us of trying to prevent you from acting courageously. Well, maybe in this case, the courageous act is to recognize that many thousands of people who care deeply about this system and who also understand education policy, and economics have some severe reservations about the details of this proposal, and do not believe that just a few weeks of revision is anywhere near enough time to address those. Sometimes the courageous act is admitting that you got it wrong. All I'm asking is that you show enough courage to take that possibility seriously instead of ignoring our very real and legitimate concerns. That's Seth Kahn. Right? I love this. Because it is right on the money about the dynamics that have been going on. It's like as if, as a faculty member at these universities, which of course I am one, and as Seth is, and as Seth says, like 5,000 others are, that all we are is like backward thinking, like Neanderthals that just want a job and don't care about education. Right? It's really disgusting. It's despicable in so many different ways. And this is just a taste of the kind of the reason why so many faculty members have become so demoralized in our role. And I count myself among those. I mean, if you've been listening to the Coop podcast for any length of time, you know. And I said, if I could retire today, right, through some sort of buyout plan, I would do it in a snap. I would do it in a snap. I am, you know, I chose to be at Kutztown. This is something else that people like Greenstein don't understand. I can't tell you how many of my colleagues I know had other job offers elsewhere. Right? I myself, I had an offer. I lived in DC. I had a job offer at George Washington University, a place that I had taught for 2 years as an adjunct. It would have meant having to teach fewer classes per year and would have meant more money. And I would have been living in a city that I loved and had great friends there. But I turned that job down to come to Kutztown to teach a double load, right? Like twice as many classes I would have to teach at GW for less money at start, right? And why? Because I wanted to be at a university like Kutztown. I grew up, when I saw those kids, right, or those students, I should say, I'm sorry, students that I kind of met when I came to Kutztown, and I talked to faculty members at Kutztown University when I came for the interview, I was reminded of my neighborhood when I grew up. And I wanted to give back to like the people from my neighborhood, basically. I mean, I didn't grow up in Pennsylvania, but it's the same principle. I saw my history in them. I also wanted to be at a union school. Not just because I wanted to, whatever, because it's like a preference or something like this, but because I had been an adjunct for long enough. I had been a graduate teaching assistant for long enough. I had been immersed in some of the, discussions about what was happening to public higher education, but higher education more broadly. I saw the degradation of labor, and I experienced firsthand at GW and at George Mason University, for example, what it meant to live in that kind of precarious situation where you're just trying to piece together a salary every single academic year or every single semester, really, where you didn't have health insurance, you didn't have any job security, right? You're moving from university to university every single day just to try to make ends meet. When I worked as an adjunct at GW, this is one of the reasons why we started to form a union there. We started organizing. I was on the organizing committee. I worked at GW as an adjunct. I worked at Politics and Prose bookstore, awesome bookstore, by the way, for minimum wage, though. And I picked up a contract work for this organization called Community and Economic Development, doing data entry stuff, right? I was picking up odd jobs here and there just to be able to make ends meet, right? So I knew that, and I was lucky enough to come from a labor family. I knew this. And, the story I've told before is that, I've also, when I was in DC, I got a good gig one summer, basically doing research in the American Federation of Teachers National Office in their higher education division. And I was basically having to do, look at contracts and look at contract language around adjunct labor. Right. And I had to call around. I was basically updating a previous report. So I had to call around to some of the people that were featured in the previous report, find out if there's any updates, get to know them. I had to call all over the country. I remember the Berkeley School of Music. I remember I had a great conversation with the president of that union there at that point. But anyways, and one of the things that would come up consistently in my discussions, not in every single case, but quite often, was say, you got to take a look at the ABSCUF contract. And I was like, what the hell's ABSCUF? I've never heard of ABSCUF before. Like, what the hell's ABSCUF? And it kept on pointing back to that. And they said, and they're right, ABSCUF has probably the strongest, I don't know if that's still the case, but at the time, the strongest language for protection of non-tenure track faculty of any contract in the country. People kept on telling me that. So when I was applying for jobs and I saw Kutztown University, I didn't even know where Kutztown was, right? I didn't even know Kutztown was a thing, right? But when I saw that was part of the state system of higher education, it clicked. This is also an ABSCUF. They're represented by ABSCUF. So that's one of the reasons I came. And there's so many of my fellow faculty members at Kutztown, at West Chester, like Seth is, but from across the system, right? At Indiana University, at Clarion University, at Edinburgh University, at East Stroudsburg University, at Mansfield University, at Bloomsburg, right? Millersville, Shippensburg, Slippery Rock, California, right? I'm trying to remember Cheney. I'm missing one, I know. But, you know, and you hear these stories, you know, when you get to talk to people from across campuses, and I can tell you how many people it's a very similar kind of thing. Some of them didn't have the union component of it. That just came with getting the job. But they were devoted to working with first generation college students, the student body that was represented. And they came despite the fact that it was a heavy course load, despite the fact that the startup salary was not as high as what they could have gotten elsewhere. And they wanted to be part of building something, right? They had that kind of mission orientation. And the stuff that Seth points to in that op-ed piece, right? Do check it out and share that thing around. I can't tell. I never thought that I would be teaching in higher education. It is like this. Like in some ways, it's my dream job, right? I mean, it's like I love higher education, but to become demoralized doing it to the point where I'm like, you want to buy me out? Buy me out. I'm just like, whatever. That, what it took to get me to that place is, you know, what Seth talks about is like, it is, you know, almost 2 decades of this kind of garbage. Being treated by university president after university president like I'm some sort of like greedy know nothing, right? That I'm only interested in myself and I don't give a crap about students. I mean, come on. And to now, you know, this is like whatever, the third, fourth successive chancellor who's ended in this same attitude. I mean, you know, come on. I mean, this, look, and again, yes, this is not specific to only state system of higher education in Pennsylvania. That's true. But here we are. Right? So, Seth, thank you for that. I really appreciate that, you know, that kind of coming up. And I wanted to share that with everybody tonight. And, you know, I should give a shout out to as well to State Senator Lindsey Williams, who I also put a link to a new page that she's got up. State Senator Lindsey Williams is, she was, you know, part of all these hearings on consolidation. And she asked some absolutely fabulous questions, right, about, you know, all throughout the hearings. She was just, you know, phenomenal. And she wants to know what you have to say, right? So what she did is that because the chancellor seemingly couldn't do this, couldn't set up a Google form of his own, right? Because he's only from Silicon Valley. What do you expect? He only worked for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in higher education. What do you expect? He doesn't know anything about Google. Google is the competition, man. But anyways, State Senator Lindsey Williams, she's got this PASSHE comment form, and you can go and you can check it out. Again, the link will be in the show notes in the podcast. It's right now. It's in the show notes on YouTube. You can check it out. Senator Lindsey, that's LINDSEY, senatorlindseyWilliams.com/PASSHE redesign, right? You can go there and it's a simple form. Ask your name, your mailing address, your phone number, right? Ask you, are you connected with any of the PASSHE schools? If so, which one? Are you affiliated with the state system in any way? What are your comments on redesign process? Questions about the redesign process? And anything else you would like Senator Williams to know about your experience with the PASSHE system or the redesign. And then you submit it. That's it. Right? It's an open-ended survey because she actually wants to know what you have to say. If you remember on the podcast a while back, we talked about this survey that we got a hold of from that was given to the Northeast schools that were, quote unquote, Northeast schools that were being consolidated. And that survey was all about, hey, which you know of these school names would you feel proud to attend, right? It was like that. And it was all this lead-in stuff. There's already decisions to be made. You were going to be the consumer that was going to choose among 3 brands of toothpaste, which was it going to be, right? That was basically what it was. Well, here you got, you know, State Senator Lindsey Williams coming out and saying, hey, we want to know what you have to say. So if you got something to say, head on over to that page, right? Again, just give you that once again, senatorlindseyWilliams.com/PASSHE redesign, and let her know what you think, right? Let her know about why it's important to kind of, support and maintain public higher education. What it means to kind of like, no longer going to be able to have a school that's going to be in your region, that you're going to be forced into kind of online classes. And you're gonna have to pretend that it's all fun and games, and you're so happy about it because you probably have to send some sort of like, yes, in order to attend this school now, you have to be part of our PR push. Who the hell knows? Whatever. I'm making that up. All right. So that's it. So, if we have time a bit later on in the show, I have some sound I can play for that or whatever it is. So what is I want to do? I'm looking at the time, and I know I've gone on more than I originally wanted to about that. I've got something else I want to talk a little bit about in a moment. But if anybody does want to call in, there's any callers right now that are logged in through riverside.fm. And if you got something to say and you want to join the conversation, you can there's a little call in button. You call in, it'll show up on my screen, and I'll let you in. Only one person will be allowed to call at a time. So if you call in, you have to wait for that caller to hang up before you'll be able to call in, just so everybody's aware of that. We don't have kind of like a queue yet. We're working on something like that, but that's going to be a little bit down the road. So if you do have anything that you'd like to call in, what you can do is you can click on if you're watching on YouTube right now, you can just click on that link. Let me see. What I will also do is I'll put it... Where is it? Sorry. I'm going to put it right now in their YouTube chat. You're going to be an audience for copy. Okay, we're going to put this right in the YouTube chat. So, and again, if you do want to call in and ask a question, right, or make a comment or have something on your mind, you can please join in. You just click on that link, but make sure that you kind of mute your YouTube or even minimize the screen so that you're not kind of listening in there, and then join into Riverside, and then you click that call in, and then I'll kind of take your call and hear what you got to say. Right, and that's going to be open to everybody. What eventually we're going to do is that I'm going to be promoting the Riverside.fm link a lot more vigorously before the show. And as well as a YouTube one. So just so you know that. So anyways, if you got anything you want to say, please feel free. Okay, so here's one of the other things. This was sent to me. Thank you very much. This is from I'll give you the Twitter handle at JGCO Canada. Yes, this is listener and patron to the show. Very, very cool. Sent me this earlier on today, and this was kind of right up the alley of what I wanted to talk about already tonight, so that I thought we'd throw this in here as well. Sorry, over on our Discord, if you want to see what Sean Kitchen is up to, go check him out on the Discord right now. He's just posting some stuff from PA Spotlight. He's got some photos. The kind of Doug Mastriano tip is going on over there. So cool. All right. So this right here, this is an op-ed that was in the Intelligencer, which is, it's published out of Doylestown, PA, right in my neck of the woods in Bucks County. It's an op-ed that came in and from Liz Downing. Liz Downing, she chairs the Post-Secondary Education Committee of the Women's Advocacy Coalition. You can check them out at bcwac.org. That's bcwac.org, www.bcwac.org. That is the Committee for Women's Advocacy Coalition. Do check them out. But my daughter again. I gotta get someday. You got to do a show with me, okay? Yeah, she'd be totally up for it. She rocks. Okay, so I'll read you a little bit of this. I'm going to read some excerpts instead of the entire thing. So this is right here. This is an op-ed. It's called "Racing Against Student Debt," and this is another reason why we have to really expand our imaginations when it comes to what we're asking for in public higher education. Right? We've been trained for 40 years now with this kind of neoliberal experiment to think that only the market could solve things, or that anytime that we talked about public investment, we were supposed to kind of like be nervous that we might offend somebody by saying that, or we have to watch out because they're going to target us up as commies or something like this. Wow, it's just crazy. It's like, our imaginations have been caged for 40 freaking years. And, it's been this kind of like, I'm afraid to advocate for something. I'm afraid to ask for something because I don't want somebody to tell me that I'm, I just want handouts. Or the taxpayer will get me. All that kind of stuff. I mean, come on. Where's our imaginations when it comes to like, what is it that education should be? I mean, I listened to a couple podcasts over the past couple days because I've been doing a lot of yard work, and I haven't listened to this stuff as I'm doing my yard work. And how many times do you have to listen to somebody say things like, well, we got to make sure that, if we have free college education, that it's going to only go toward people that are going to work in some field that is going to serve the public because it's taxpayer money. Like, I mean, are you freaking kidding me? The whole idea about having free public higher education is to get rid of the bankers from the education exchange. It's the whole idea about unleashing people's creative capacities. About you go into college to learn and to explore and find out. It's not just job training. I mean, it's hard to convince anybody that's the case now. Well, what's it going to do for the job? The economy's going to peg the job. I mean, you think about it. These legislators, for example, who said, we got to make sure that we're responsive to the economy. Okay, great. So we need more what? You name it. We need more, let's say we need more engineers. What kind of engineers do we need? We need X, Y, and Z engineers. Oh, okay, great. So in order to get that engineering degree, they're going to have 5 years of schooling, maybe to go on and do some additional couple years of master's work. So that's let's just say 7 years of schooling. So you're going to tell me you need those engineers now. So we're going to invest in education. So 7 years from now, you're going to get that employee. It doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even make sense. Especially in this country, when you've got no planned economy or anything like this, you're going to tell me that you're going to invest in, job-specific stuff that's responsive to the economy? Give me a freaking break. And what does it mean to when I went to college, right? I can tell you, I was one of these kids, and maybe this is my bias, I don't know. I was one of these kids that I just couldn't wait to get the heck out of my town. Right? I couldn't wait to get away from some real freaking small-mindedness as I saw it at the time of my arrogant little teenage self. Yeah. And I would skip school and I would go to the public library and I would read like philosophy stuff, or I would pick up a history book at the public library because I wasn't learning about that stuff in school. And I wanted to go to college because I wanted to be around other people who wanted to learn. That was my goal. And I went, and my mind went, it was like, whoa. And it wasn't just what I learned in classes. It was what I was, discussing with other people. And when I went to college, I didn't know what the heck I wanted to do. I mean, they told me the two hardest schools, I went to Syracuse as an undergrad, right? They told me the two hardest schools to transfer into at the time were the Newhouse School of Public Communication and the Business School. So I said, okay, those are the hard to transfer into, but I could get into them now. There's yes, okay, double major in communications and business. Why? Because I didn't want to get locked out of that down the road because it was hard to transfer. So, okay, why not just declare those majors now and I'll figure it out as I go along. After changing my majors like 5 times, I ended up in political science, which I absolutely loved. Right? I mean, and then I went on and a master's degree in English and followed all this kind of this kind of stuff. And I can't tell you the number of students that I've taught who might be English majors, or they might be, political science majors. They might be science majors who ended up doing something. They found some kind of like avenue through kind of discussions with faculty and their peers and so on, or through internship, whatever it might be. And they've decided, and they've gone off in a direction that has nothing to do with their degree, but they're doing amazing stuff. And you get these discussions about people that want to shoehorn everything into like these specific occupations. And then forget the humanities, forget history, forget, literature, forget, art, music. No. Exactly. But that's the very thing that makes us human. That's the very thing that, that should be the motivating factor of what we kind of imagine for ourselves in life. And I mean ourselves broadly, not just like me as an individual, but I mean just like as a society, as a culture, as a world. And I was re-listening to, this is a little bit off topic for what I was just about to about my lead in for this, but I was listening to something Michael Brooks said. Michael Brooks was the co-host of the Majority Report. He was just a great thinker. Had the Michael Brooks show, and he died suddenly last. Was it 2 summers ago or last summer? This COVID stuff has got me. I think it was last summer. It was shocking, right? He was young, whatever, but he was talking about this idea about cosmopolitan socialist or kind of leftist kind of agenda, and what that all meant. And he talked about that humanity at the core. Right. And I know in some left circles, that's kind of like, we're talking about humanity or humanism. That's like essentializing. It's like, it's not how he's meaning it, or, and if you're to talk about it, and just brought me back to that again. So anyways, that's just kind of like this long way around. This is what we're doing. We're just kind of trying to, cut people off at the knees. Anyways, and student debt is a huge part of this. Right. And so, now, I was going to call it a modest proposal, right? But it's like, I mean, really what we should be having, right? We should talk, we should be pushing hard for free public higher education, period. Like public option, higher education, period. That's it, right? And anything less from that, and I still believe this, anything less than that is a failing, right? Does that mean we don't strive for it? No, right? We, every step along that way towards the end of free public higher education, we should pursue. Right? Doesn't mean everybody has to go it, but it means that they're not going to be saddled with debt for the rest of their lives, right? And we're not going to have bankers, and in some cases employers, right? And in some cases the government, right? On their backs, right? Staring at them, asking, can you make your payment? When's your payment due? You going to do your payment? Right? That kind of like stress. And I remember that. Anyways, so this is from Liz Downing. Once again, I'll remind you how, before I went on my tangent, she's the Post-Secondary Education Committee chair of the Women's Advocacy Coalition. That's bcwac.org. And she's writing about the Nellie Bly Scholarship. Right? I don't know if everybody is aware of this, but this would be a really important, and I think fairly modest contribution to putting a hole in some of that student debt. So I'm going to read a little bit of what she wrote in her op-ed. So she wrote, Pennsylvania has been subsidizing the racehorse industry since 2004 to the tune of $230 million a year. The funding comes from taxes on the revenue of casino slot machines. Yes, horse racing has not been flourishing in the Commonwealth, but should taxpayers be subsidizing a sector that is largely run by millionaires? Why not use some of those tax proceeds to relieve the financial burden on low and middle class students enrolled at the 14 universities that make up the Pennsylvania State System of Higher Education, or PASSHE? Last February, Governor Wolf recommended we do just that. He proposed that $204 million of casino slot machine tax revenues be used to fund the Nellie Bly Scholarship Program. And this was named for, I'm so glad you put this in because this is so important, named for a 19th century Pennsylvania journalist whose reporting on the condition of mental health institutions in New York led to significant reforms. Bly, who was born near Pittsburgh in 1864, enrolled in Indiana Normal School, now Indiana University of Pennsylvania, for one term but was forced to drop out in 1879 because she could not afford to continue. Here's the irony here. Nellie Bly, one of the kind of key muckrakers in American history, went on to do all this reporting, exposed all this stuff about, she says mental health institutions and all that. She was an amazing, amazing kind of muckraking journalist. Went to Indiana University of Pennsylvania, IUP, right? And right now, under Chancellor Greenstein's proposal, the journalism school, the journalism department, the journalism major is one of the things that's being slated to be eliminated after that storied history. Can you believe it? Anyways, let me read on. For the Nellie Bly Scholarship Program to become a reality, the Pennsylvania legislature must approve it. Representative Jordan Harris, a Philadelphia Democrat, is currently circulating a memo among House members to gain support for the program before introducing it as a bill. In his memo, Harris says that Pennsylvania's four-year public higher education system is unaffordable for economically disadvantaged students, even those with maximum Pell and PA state grants. Let's skip down a little bit. Harris points out that in 2010, tuition and fees at public higher education institutions have increased 16%, and that about 70% of Pennsylvania students borrow on average $39,000 over 4 years. It is the second highest debt burden among states nationally, and is nearly $10,000 more than the national average of $29,900, or $29,900. It is estimated that Pennsylvanians carry a total of $68 billion in student debt, impacting the Commonwealth's workforce and economy. The Nellie Bly Scholarship Program would prioritize full-time undergraduate students who are pursuing careers in education and healthcare at PASSHE universities. Eligible students would have a household income of under $104,800. For the most economically disadvantaged students, the scholarship would fund tuition and fees not covered by students' Pell Grants or PA state grants. Scholarship recipients would have to commit to living and working in Pennsylvania for the same number of years they participated in the program. And if they left the state, the scholarship would convert to a loan that would be deferred as long as the student was working towards education. It's expected the program would help 44,000 students. Right, and I'll close with, and a Philadelphia Inquirer article reported that the $230 million the horse racing industry receives from the state pays for all but a small share of the prize money. Susan Spica, executive director of the Education Voters for Pennsylvania, a pro-public education advocacy group, told the Inquirer that legislators have a choice to make. Quote, and this is Susan Spica, they can either fund college students who will become our teachers and nurses, or continue to give $200 million to wealthy horse owners, many of whom live out of state. Right? So this is the kind of call to basically contact your legislators and urge them to support the Nellie Bly Scholarship. So I want to thank once again JGCO Canada, that I won't, for passing this on. Yes, I'm only giving out Twitter handles. Yes, that's sure. So once again, if anybody is joined in on Riverside and you'd like to call in, you got something to say, I'd love to hear from you. You can check us out. You click that little call in button. I should get a little notification on my screen. And we can hear what you got to say. Cool. So while we're waiting to see if anybody is going to call us, you got a bunch of people who joined on Riverside, which I'm very psyched about. I thought, one of the things that I just like to, I know what I want to say. So this Wednesday, as I mentioned, that Cyril Michaleko and I are doing this kind of semi-regular, which will turn into more regular Wednesday podcast, and we're just going to call it the Wednesday Show. We were batting around to what should we call it? Like, I kind of like just the Wednesday Show. It's like the Wednesday Show, and it's going to be a little bit more short format. And one of the ideas that we were talking about for kind of down the road, it's just kind of look at some of the things that we've been reading. I mean, we were talking about some of the books that we're reading today, and we're like, we should just fold this into some of the segments, right? And that got me thinking. And I've mentioned this on the show a couple times before, but mentioned this on the show a couple times before, but I just finished Stephanie Kelton's book, The Deficit Myth. And it's absolutely fantastic. Let's see. Hold on. We got Paul is calling in. Let me see if we can bring Paul into the conversation. Hey, Paul, you there?
Yeah, is this working?
Yeah, it is working. It was working. Are you hearing me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. Everything's good on your end.
That was great, man. Hey, good to see you, man. How you been?
Pretty good. I had the final surgery from the ski accident a couple weeks ago, so I'm just recovering from that. But I should be
Woo!
good. I signed a lease in Kutztown, so I should be able to move back. Have all in-person classes next semester. I can't wait.
Paul, for everybody who's listening, everybody should know Paul is one of the students who works through KU Activists. And they are kind of an amazing group of activists that have been just doing some phenomenal work at Kutztown. It's been great. Just for a little context. So, hey, what's on your mind, man?
Yeah. So I guess I just kind of want to ask a little bit of a question,
Yeah.
right? So when KU activists formed, it seemed very easy and almost like the group was destined to happen, right? People wanted to be involved. We immediately grew a lot. We had that win with Officer Schwartz, I guess former Officer Schwartz now, thankfully, no longer being at Kutztown, and like that was amazing, and just because of how much work it was, KUA is kind of taking an organization break.
Mhm.
We'll probably start up next month sometime to prepare for the next semester when we can do even more in-person things, which will be good. But I've been trying to talk to people about this consolidation, and I don't know what it is. I mean, I trust my abilities in organizing, right?
Mhm.
There is of course things I can do better, but it seems like this is such a big problem, and people like students aren't quite getting it, especially students at universities, that aren't being consolidated like
Right.
Kutztown. Like it's clearly an issue, and I think everybody I've talked to has agreed that it's like not a good thing, but I've been having real trouble getting people to be interested in organizing around this and stuff. And I just wanted to kind of I trust you as an organizer and stuff and kind of lend your ear to that.
So I think I think a couple things that first of all, like make it a tricky conversation, right? Is that one is that we're not seeing a strong kind of statewide push around this issue, right? Only now are we through some of the hearings and things. Is there even a spotlight on it, right?
Yeah.
And when the issue of this forced consolidation is usually talked about or is reported on in the media, half the time it's reported on in a very technical way, right? So merging these things and all this, and it's always framed in these budgetary dynamics, so it sounds like reasonable. Oh, well, maybe this is a way to save it, right? And how many people are really paying attention to the specifics unless they're directly affected by it, right? So I kind of get that as a context, and part of that is and I've said this on the show before, is that I think it's the interested parties, right? Whether it's the faculty union or whether it's a staff union or whether it's the students that were involved or the communities, I think that they spent the first part of this process kind of doing things in good faith, right? Basically saying, okay, we don't want to be kind of like alarmist on this. So that what we're going to do is that we're going to jump in and we're going to be part of this process and try to influence the process and let it adhere, because they thought that maybe that's actually going to influence it, and then only to have the rug pulled out from under them. Now, for me, I could tell you that I was saying to other folks in the kind of ABSCUF and the faculty union and things like this, I'm like, look, you can't trust this dude as far as you can throw him, right? I said the game here is to get everybody on board to make it look like that there's been this process so they can force through a preordained plan. This is exactly what's going on, right? So anyways, so my point with that is kind of the difficulty you're kind of experiencing is in part because you're swimming uphill in some ways, right? About trying to establish a narrative and let people know what's going on, all this stuff.
Yeah, and like it was kind of easy with the Kutztown specific stuff because everybody should be against bigoted officers. It was very cut and dry,
right?
And even with the other stuff, like the more ethereal things that we have in the demand letter, everything's very like out in front of you. Like, hey, we should have more mental health resources, right? One mental health professional for every 800 students just doesn't cut it now. So, and this is kind of more out there and budgety and stuff.
Well, and what I think for me, in one part, this is a longer term, I think, struggle at this point. And I think that people are not abstractly interested in like schools that they're not part of, right? And that I think this is not a fault of any particular faculty member or students or anything like this. It's just, I think, what it is. People are most concerned with what's going on there. And I think by putting this consolidation in a little bit of a bigger context, right, it has to do with a massive downsizing. I mean, I don't know. Did you see that that report from Perry, the one from the UMass professors?
Yeah, I think so. It was a little above 2,000 job losses, or
Right.
something like that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So the one thing is the consolidation is only one part of the bigger picture, right? So I think that especially as they organizing, you're organizing at Kutztown, the argument in my mind is something along these lines: is, hey, look, there has been this redesign plan. We got this report from UMass, and this is what it says. Basically, what they're doing is they're calling it redesign, but basically what they're doing is they're cutting so many jobs. It's like you're closing plants in small communities. And Kutztown University alone, I mean, yes, it's true that in consolidation, post-consolidation, there's only going to be a certain number of jobs lost. But from the beginning of the redesign plan, the job has been, we're going to eliminate like 1,500 direct jobs, and we're going to eliminate, then we're going to have the impact of affecting something like 2,200 jobs.
Yeah,
and so then
I
the question is, at Kutztown, what is that number? Right? And I wish I had that number right here, but it's like,
if I'm remembering, it's above 100 for sure.
Correct.
Yeah, which is a lot at, Kutztown's kind of a small school, small to mid-size. That's a lot of people that'll be out of work, and there's not many employment opportunities around Kutztown unless you go to Allentown or Reading or somewhere else.
No, and think about it like this: if I'm going to cut 100 faculty members, right, what is that going to mean for your major, right? Think about this: when you're sitting there logged in, trying to register for classes in the next semester, right? What happens, right, when you can't get a job? Well, I'm sorry, if you can't get a class, right? I mean, how many classes get locked out? I can't tell you. I have got it I would probably call it a record number of requests this semester to try to get me to over-enroll. I mean, we don't have control as individual faculty members over that in my department, but try to over-enroll classes because students can't get classes that they need to in order to graduate. And why? Number one, good faculty members are leaving because they see the writing on the wall. Number two, the university is not replacing those faculty members who have retired, right? And number three, when there's been somebody who's been gone for a long time, they never provide the new lines for the program, so they don't give the support. So at a very material, specific semester to semester basis, it's like your ability to finish on time at Kutztown University is being directly affected by these cuts. And then you can use what they're doing with the consolidation plan as an example. So you think this is bad? Look what they did over here. And if you don't think that they can do that at Kutztown too as well, you're crazy. They're already looking at the ways of consolidating the physics program, for example, or bringing that together with Edinburgh University.
Yeah, and there's no way, I mean, there's nothing officially in the works, but there's no way that Greenstein's going to stop with just the six, right? I mean, if you follow his logic, it would make sense that every school would be just, one institution. And, that's kind of the hard thing too. It's like we're trying to stop a speeding train or something. And it's just,
Yeah, no, I agree. And you think about it like this. This is what Lindsey Williams, State Senator Lindsey Williams was so good about in her questioning about, you're basically holding Greenstein to his feet to the fire and basically saying, look, you promised all these things. At a previous hearing, I asked you all these questions. Now here we are, and there's no answers to this about what the impacts are, what students actually think, how are these series of problems going to be addressed, and he's done absolutely nothing, right? He has not responded to any of that. Okay, so you haven't responded to any of those questions. So most likely what's going to happen, if you look at his specific plan, he's basically saying that more students are going to enroll because they're going to be more enthusiastic and we're going to market this a lot. So he's basically saying that we're going to do a better job at PR, and fingers crossed that's going to lead to more students enrolling in our schools, and therefore everything's going to be saved.
Yeah, while
right?
You're making programs worse across the board.
No, totally.
I would not... my sister's she's graduating high school. I told her, and I love Kutztown. I love what Kutztown is. I love the faculty. I love all that. But I told her that she should not go to a PASSHE school. right? Because you just don't know what's going to happen. And I mean, she's going to be elementary education, so that's kind of like a safe major, but you never know.
Right.
You know, I think she's going to Penn State now, which is super expensive, but you know, at least it seems more, you know, concrete, at least the plan. You know?
Totally. Hey, listen, I'm going to try something here. Nick is calling in. I want to see if we can get both of you on. If I lose you, I really appreciate the call, but if I can get him to come on too as well, because he's responding to something that you're talking about. Let me see if I can let him in.
Yeah, no, all good. All good. Thanks for having me on.
Yep. Let's see. Nick, are you coming in? Let me see if he's going to come in.
Yeah, I see his name kind of pop up sometimes, and then it goes away.
Yeah. Well, listen. Let me get on and kind of bring Nick on, because Nick is actually I actually told him about you, right, and KU activist. He's been working with some folks.
We've been in contact a little.
Oh, you have been.
Yeah.
Excellent.
But I'll hang up now. So it was nice talking to you.
All right, man. Good. Yeah, good talking to you, man.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, Nick, I think I got you.
Yeah, sorry. I don't know. On my end, it like froze out. And also, hi, Paul. Even though he can't see me, but
well, he's not on. Yeah, he went back. I was hoping that
No, I was here.
Yeah, I know that on Riverside they were talking about being able to bring in more than one caller at a time. I was hoping that they'd done that, but it doesn't look like it's worked out yet. So, anyways, yeah, Nick, what's going on, man?
No,
thanks again for coming on last week. That was an awesome show.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for having me. And I was just catching the tail end of stuff that you were saying. I think I got on at like, I don't know, maybe like 7:50, 7:55-ish, hearing about the horse racing and stuff. You know, we love the horse racers, folks. We love them. Fantastic people. Fantastic. No, but
I just like how they get those little jockeys on them. It's like almost like it's like a Lego.
Yeah. You know, yeah, it's like a little Lego, you know, tiny person, big horse, you know, it's, you know, I don't understand. What are they doing? I don't know. Yeah, right. But to quickly say with, you know, to add on of what you were saying to sort of Paul's question, and also to say, like, Paul and I are, you know, working side by side, I'd say, in different ways, and I've been in contact.
Fantastic.
And I'm very glad to, you know, like, get, you know, people like Paul and others to, you know, join into this fight. But, you know, I agree with Paul. It's hard in a sense to get students when I wouldn't even necessarily say that they don't care, but I would say that they're in a defeatist mindset where they think that they can't do anything. They think that they are powerless, which I would argue individually to an extent, yes. I kind of agree. Like like for instance, my one voice is not going to like extremely, you know, like change society and make Chancellor Dan, you know, like rip apart this plan and do something totally different. But if we can get enough people together to do that collectively,
right, then
that's what can really like spur that change. And it's more about showing students that you do have the power if we come together, just like what Paul has been doing with the KU activists group. If folks come together and have those lists of demands, now, yes, there are certain things that will take a long time to really work on and get enough power, but it can get done.
Well, look, I think, you know, and I think one of the things that I was just talking about there with Paul too as well was one of the, I think, the most important part of, or one of the most important parts, or I shouldn't say most important, one of the important parts of doing this collectively, right, is the creative process of thinking about responses, right? So just like where we're just kind of like, you know, essentially workshopping right there, right? Like, how do we actually begin to kind of think about messaging or talking to other students about it? I mean, you know, when you're organizing, doing union organizing, for example, you call that a rap, right? You say, what's the rap, right? What's that thing that you're going to use in order to go talk to people about it? Right. And, you know, how do you do it? And, you know, you find out that when you get people in a room or on a Zoom call or whatever it means, and you start batting around ideas, you can start to come up with some good ones, and you start to think about and then you debrief afterwards, right? You try it out, and then you figure out what worked, what didn't work, right? And then you kind of revise what's going on. And I think, you know, the suggestion that I was making there about thinking about something specific locally, right, and then allowing and connecting that up. I mean, that comes from, you know, one of the first interviews I ever did with Raging Chicken was with Noam Chomsky, right? And we had he happened to be at Kutztown, like literally like a couple months after we launched, and I was like, what the hell? Let's see if I can get him on for interview, right? Yes, sorry, Scout. Yeah, I said hell. Oh, did it again. But he's like, sure. So we did this interview with him, and that's one of the things he said. We're asking about Occupy, and we're asking what the the influence would be, or what the impact might be, from his perspective. And he kept on coming back to that idea. Is like, sometimes it's the traffic stop, right? The traffic light, or at a dangerous intersection, right, that you're organizing around, has nothing to do with kind of like, let's bring out the socialist revolution. It had to do with kind of making sure that kids aren't dying on that corner, right? And then and part of that process, you're meeting people and you're talking to people about it, you're building that connection, and then you get the traffic light, and that's a win, right? Now you've done something together. You've done that something collectively. You're not just doing operating as an individual, and in that builds hope, right? In that builds possibility. And then you go on to the next thing. Right. And so, I think that model in my mind is right. So like the core of organizing, right? You're thinking about you starting with the specific, right, around the things that matter to people in front of you. You're not trying to convince people of the ideology. You're trying to kind of like get people organized around a problem to solve, right? Mike Gambone on my campus is phenomenal at doing this kind of stuff, right? When it comes around organized around building safety and a whole bunch of other things. You start with the problem in order to try to get it to solve that one. But
no, I totally agree with you there. And to, note at least this week, I'll say what PASSHE Defenders to an extent is trying to do, and I'm going to be sending out an email to folks.
Good, because I'm going to ask
tomorrow.
You. Good, because before you go, I want to ask about your meeting and how it went.
No, of course. So yeah, let me say that first.
Yeah.
I'll
go
say
for
what
it.
I was going to say. But so no, it went well. We had, I would say, like 30 to 40-ish people. I saw at one point that we had 32,
wow.
And I think we had like a little bit more, so I was glad. I mean, some of that, like myself, Alex, Paul, some faculty, some students, I think a couple staff, and I think that it was successful. Folks had said very much like thank you, and like you're doing great work, et cetera, and kind of what we did, and Alex and I, or it was more me who I like created it, but she, gave like some input in ways. But this PowerPoint of, first showing like a little bit of our like quote unquote mission of, truthfully, where I want to see us go and where I want to see, people continue to fight for is to really get college education, higher education and such to be free. Because, any having any payment, for higher education means that it's sort of, more bound up, I'll say, in the like neoliberal capitalist structure. Right. And then it's also the fact that it would cost something would mean that it's almost, you could argue, like a regressive tax, because, Donald Trump's kids can, pay the, however much to go to college, but someone else, it hurts, on their income at a higher proportion. I forget the exact terms that I'm trying to use, but, with that. But with it, so we talked a little bit about that, a little bit about, what we called the state of the system, not, Chancellor Greenstein's state of the system, but our version of the state of the system. Used a bit of the Perry report, which I know some folks had read, some folks had not. So I, went through that, somewhat quickly, and then somewhat talked at the end more with organizing plans in terms of, a few different actions and asks for folks. And I'm going to be sending out an email this week to those that we have on our list to sort of say, call your representatives, make sure to, do this. This week specifically, though, we're trying to have calls go to Marian Moskowitz, who is Chester County Commissioner, and I live in Chester County, and Westchester is in Chester County. So especially because I know folks around here, I really want to try to put the pressure there first and, see what happens. And we're going to be having a rally alongside, there's some people who I know who are in a local organization called the PSL of Chester County, the chapter. And PSL stands for the Party of Socialism and Liberation. And we're going to be having a rally this Friday at noon. And we're going to be, in the center of Westchester and then marching to Moskowitz's office and sort of, demand that she votes no.
So I guess you probably know. I guess you probably know Curry Maylott then, right?
Oh yeah. I am good friends with Curry.
Tell him I said hello.
I love him.
Tell him I said hello.
I definitely will, Kevin. I did mention your name because I had mentioned that I was going to be on the podcast and stuff. No, but no, I definitely will. But yeah, so doing that and hopefully. It at least shows some sort of, pressure that they're going to like acknowledge something. And then as well as I had mentioned and to Paul, and even I'll mention to you, Kevin, is I highly suggest if, and I'm thinking somewhat with PASSHE defenders of how best to structure things and maybe to have like sort of like a pseudo lead at like different institutions to try to do their own, as you were saying, like local work in terms of like the issues drilled down there. But, I definitely want the folks at Kutztown to call State Senator Schwenk's office and get her to vote no. Like, explain to her why this plan is bad, because she is someone I think is very much flippable, but she really needs that pressure. Because
I agree.
She has been very much like flaky on things and just more like, oh, we'll get the comments in and we'll change it's like, no. You don't understand. That's not going to happen.
No, look, and she's a politician, right? And now part of the issue now is that she's been involved in the process of the Board of Governors, right? And there's a certain degree of kind of like being pulled in a couple different opposite directions. Right, because now she's been kind of invested in part in terms of that process, and now it feels like she's got to defend it to a certain degree. And I could care less.
Agreed.
I mean, I could care less what she really thinks about it at this point, right? I mean, what I just know is her public pronouncements, and she, exactly as you said, she's waffled on a lot of this. She has not been an advocate, right, to pushing back, but she's basically saying you can tweak it, put in your customer like comment card, and we'll get back to you. It's like that kind of thing, right? And I think that's
true.
And I don't know if you heard this earlier on too, but State Senator Lindsey Williams has a page up that's senatorlindsey.williams.com/PASSHE redesign. I'd also kind of encourage people again, get on that and kind of any kind of affiliation you've got to make it, because she's been doing a bang up job in terms of consolidating a lot of those voices. So.
No, I agree with you there, Kevin. And I'll also say that if folks do it all, I would highly suggest if you're going to send anything to the public comment, like folks like at PASSHE, please do it via email instead of their form. And please CC us at PASSHEdefenders@gmail.com, and also CC some of the folks at AppScuff, because, both of us are more than happy to like help do somewhat what Senator Lindsey Williams is doing and consolidate that information and really bring it out to folks of these are the comments. These are, these are what people are actually thinking, and you haven't released anything. And, me thinking to myself, we're a month in, and I don't know. I don't think I've heard a single thing of like, here are some of the comments, or here's what some people are saying.
Correct. Right.
In any way, shape, or form.
The only way you're hearing that right now is you have the Democratic Committee Caucus, and those hearings is one of the only places where you're getting to hear some of that stuff back about what you're hearing back from constituents and so on.
And what was really funny, and I'm just proud of myself because I'm not on Twitter much, but excuse me, sorry. But I ended up replying to a tweet that AppScuff was doing, is like their live tweeting. And, basically Senator Lindsey Williams, as Chancellor Greenstein came on, she asked him right away, like, did you listen to what the students said? And he was like, I was on and off. And then she's like, you should go back and listen. And then I just replied, because literally I was cutting grass. In the summers, I generally cut grass to at least make some money. And I was doing that, listening on my headphones. And I just laugh, and I'm like, okay, when I get home, I'm going to reply, like, tweet this. And I did. And it was just like, at Chancellor Greenstein, I was listening in, and I was cutting grass while doing so and paying for my PASSHE education. I don't know what's more important than you to, like, to have the time to listen to students.
Exactly.
I'm able to do this, and I'm, come on.
Right. And it's not my job to pay attention to these things.
Yeah, it's not. But, please. And then quickly, I'll just say with other stuff that, we're like, somewhat in the talks of doing we're having another meeting this Thursday. So for anyone who is listening, please come out. Please feel free to email us at PASSHEdefenders@gmail.com. If you want to be on our email list, we're going to be strongly encouraging folks to, themselves call Chester County Commissioner Marian Moskowitz. Even if you're not from Chester County, please do so. If you are from Chester County, note that you're from Chester County. But if not, she is an appointed official, like appointed to the Board of Governors.
Right.
We have no technical say, which is idiotic, except through the supposed public comments. But it's its own thing. And the thing that I wonder to myself, Kevin, is with the June 9th and 10th hearings or like public comment forums, whatever you want to call them. I really wonder when they're going to post about them, because they still have not. And we're not that far away from June 9th and 10th. They don't have the Zooms up, and it says on the webpage 4 options. So I question to myself, are they going to only allow folks to select one? What are they doing there? And I think that they're just holding out until it'll be the week of, and then they'll finally post the Zooms.
No, that's right.
Keep people at bay.
Yeah, it's because that's the way you thwart any kind of organized opposition, right? Is that you basically you give people very little time by which to get organized and response, and that's been their MO up until now. But the good thing is, when it comes to that, is that you can just assume that's going to be the case at this point. And if you're wrong, right? Let's say, and if you're wrong and they come with everything tomorrow, no loss, right? I mean, but if you're right, then it means okay, then what's the contingency plan for that, right? Given the fact that this is what they've done in the past, they've waited to the last minute to put the stuff out. How do we want to respond? And you can kind of game out options ahead of time, right? I think that one of the suggestions, it might have even been you, it might have been Alex on the show, is basically we got these public comment periods. If you have an organized way of kind of flooding that time, right, with those public comments, I mean, I think that makes a whole lot of sense. The other thing I will say too, this goes to you were kind of responding to Paul's stuff too as well, about writing these kind of if you're writing about support, writing in public support. At the beginning of show or in the middle of the show today, I read Seth Kahn's piece, right? His open letter to Chancellor Greenstein.
I was very happy. It was Dana Morrison from Westchester. I had sent out I had sent to her and to some others a quote, and that was the quote that Kahn ended up using in the thing from a podcast I was listening to while working of Chancellor Greenstein.
There you go.
And then I hear that, and I'm like, oh my God, what?
Yep.
Really? Okay, yeah, that's you.
Yep. No, it's fantastic. And I think, but that model too as well, where, you're you're having these open letters. So it's written to somebody, but you're finding other places to put it. So look, I mean, it doesn't take much to put something in a Google Doc, right? And then share it on Twitter, to share it on Facebook, right? Or any other place that people are involved in social media, so that at the very least it's going up in kind of particular places, right? And I like, if the stuff like PASSHEdefenders.com, right? You just kind of, or at Gmail. Wait, how was it? PASSHEdefenders@gmail.com, right?
At gmail.com, yeah.
So stuff going to some sort of repository, right? And look, send stuff to me, give me a copy of this too, ragingchickenpress@gmail.com. I would love to kind of read these things on the show, right? As ways of both at our weekly news roundup and kind of Out to Coop Live, where we do these call-in shows for everybody that's out there. I mean, this is kind of, the more that we can amplify these messages from a bunch of different ways as a way, and again, the goal has to be facilitating organizing, because they've shown that you can argue the best you can with the best information and the best facts at your disposal, and it's not going anywhere, right? So it's only when we have given the fact that we're in COVID, it makes that much more difficult. I mean, I think you mentioned this earlier, but I mean, normally what would happen is that should be showing up at these hearings, right? And that's, I recognize that is incredibly difficult. But if we think about that as a creative problem to solve, right, then it becomes like, okay, what are some of the other options? What are some of the other ways that we can, bring that kind of energy and directness, right? Because if, direct action gets the goods, we always say.
Yeah, very true. Very true. And yeah, I'll make sure to send you some of that stuff. My apologies for not having sent anything as of yet.
Oh, please. No apologies.
Oh, yeah.
Like I still owe you some contacts that I got to hook you up with some folks that we're working with PA Student Power Network. So no worries.
Oh yeah, no, definitely feel free to. I would be more than happy, because I'll say, I know, myself, I'm starting like a semi-ish full-time job, and then like cutting grass and trying to do this. And then I know Alex herself is, right now, like rather busy, with work and things. So, doing what we can. But, I will say to anyone, who is listening, and, even yourself, Kevin, we definitely have some, resources together to share out to folks, both ones that I would suggest, feel free to, share some things out on social media, and some ones that are, some more likely, like, just personal things of like, hey, like, keep this in mind, like, this board of governor, just to let you know, is involved in X, Y, and Z.
Exactly.
Oh, right,
Right, exactly.
But all the random things, we gotta love it.
Yeah, there you go, man. Well, very cool. Well, hey, man, thanks for calling in. Let me ask you to do a favor. I forgot to mention this to Paul too as well. Is that before you close your browser, make sure there's that little kind of upload thing that is kind of showing your upload kind of after you log off, because it should. If not, I might send you like a notif later on. So then when you kind of log off, you might see like a little dial up that'll say. And just it should take no more than about, like, I don't know, 10, 15 seconds or something like that. So
yeah, no worries.
All right,
I'll
man.
hang up and keep that on. Thanks, Kevin.
All right, yeah, good talking to you.
Same.
All right, well, hey, we went a lot longer than I was expecting today, but that's in the best way possible. This is what this show allows us to do, right? We get calls. That's what I love, the open calls. We get folks kind of calling in, kind of actually doing some kind of public thinking about organizing and stuff. That's absolutely fantastic. So listen, if there's anybody else that still got something to say, I see there's got a couple people listening on Riverside still to feel free. We've got to take a quick call before we log off. But one of the things that I want to remind everybody of is that we'll have this second show with Cyril Michaleko this coming Wednesday. That's at 10:30 a.m. So I know that that's going to kind of run into a lot of conflicts with people in terms of listening live. But we will be streaming it live to YouTube. And that will obviously kind of go back into our regular podcast feed. So make sure you subscribe to our podcast wherever you get your podcasts, Podbean, iTunes, Google Play. Make sure that wherever you get your podcast, you listen to this as a podcast, make sure that you're kind of give us that 5-star rating, write us a little bit of review. That's how other people get to find the show. And that's how we get to amplify the messages and amplify the work that we're doing here. Reminder, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you kind of hit that subscribe button, and make sure you like this stream, and make sure you hit that notification bell so that you know every time we go live, because there will be some surprises coming up soon. So let me just kind of close for this. Yes, definitely tune in on Wednesday if you can. That should be really good. We're going to be talking a little bit about, again, coming back to the PASSHE theme once again, but then some organizing stuff and some other things that Cyril's paying attention to. We just had these kind of school board elections in the kind of across the Commonwealth, and we've got some these kind of QAnon folks that are running for school board now. This seems to be the next target, which is flying under the radar. I got an email from a friend, Steve, from Kutztown, who found out basically at the last minute that one of the people that was running for school board, one of the open seats there, was not identified as a Republican or a Democrat, but was kind of running, as for school board and blah, blah, blah. Turned out to be one of these right-wing nut jobs. So what did he do? He took 2 weeks or something like that before the election, mounted a write-in campaign, and got the Democratic Party nomination for that school board seat, right? And now it's going to have to go the broader election, have to kind of deal with this, because recognizing that these school boards are being targeted. And this is something that Cyril flagged a while ago. One of the reasons why he was, on his Substack, he was basically, profiling all these school board candidates, because we're finding out that that's being, the places that are being targeted. And they're using this kind of critical race theory stuff, right, as a way of kind of like, claiming that it's a crisis and getting people motivated to get on these school boards. So I'm sure we'll be talking a little bit about that, and more about where we're going. Of course, on Friday, it's our news roundup. Sean Kitchen and I will get together and talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly in state and national politics. And want to remind you, look, the way that you can help support this show, but all those other things, subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you like the stream, rate us, review us, give us that positive, share this stuff out. But you can also help support this show materially by becoming a patron, by going to patreon.com/rcpress for as little as $5 a month, right? That's like one good beer a month. You can help support this show and keep us free of the kind of, the influences, right? So if we're only accountable to you, and we're only accountable to ourselves. We don't have to worry about someone, say, pulling funding or something like this, right? I mean, obviously, if you're a patron, you can pull your funding if you don't like what to say. Other than that, that's fine, right? But there's nobody kind of looking over our shoulders, basically, kind of with that, except for my daughter, who's sitting over there, who makes sure that I watch my mouth when I'm on the show, right, Scout? Yes. All right. So listen, this is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken. I appreciate the conversation tonight. Thank you, Nick, and thank you, Paul, for calling in. And in the future, I'd love to hear from even some more folks. Hopefully by Friday, I'll be able to announce some of the upcoming shows that we'll have on Out to Coop Live. I'm fingers crossed. I know next Monday is Memorial Day, but hopefully, if I have to push it one day, I might have to, but I'll let you know well ahead of time. But we're planning on doing next Monday's show. But I'm really excited for our schedule coming up and some great ideas we have for some upcoming shows. So anyways, this is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken Press. Make sure that you like everything. Make sure that you become a member if you can by going to patreon.com/rcpress. I appreciate you all for taking the time and spending some of the tonight with me, with Nick, with Paul, with everybody else who joined our stream. And hey, have a good week, and hope to see you Wednesday. See you again on Friday. Enjoy the weather. It's going to get hot again, but what are you going to do? Summertime. See ya!
The future. Hello, is there anybody there? It seems I'm all alone again. Does anybody care? This planet's empty. I see no signs of life. Please don't tell me that the human race did not survive.
There are no people in the future.
There are no people.
There are no people in the future.
No people at all.
There are no people in the future.
Where did all my people go?
There are no people in the future.
Let me try my people call.